drill out, thin out the bone. When you are doing a kerison, you just see whether you want to go more cranial, caudal or lateral. So there you limit it. And when you are going lateral, you see a thin fibrous tissue going across the nerve. And we have seen there that fibrous tissue which goes across the nerve perpendicularly is the level of vertebral artery. So you go beyond that, just deeper to it will be the vertebral artery. So when you see that fibrous band, you stop. You don't go lateral.
We have a name for that, Sura band.
So, good afternoon everyone. So, it's a video session, so I'll keep it to the myself. This is a case where we'll see a upper lumbar case, L1, L2. Disc prolapse. This patient came with a cauda equina syndrome where more of bladder symptoms than lower limb symptoms. We had a urodynamic abnormality and a lot of radiculopathy also, but more of urinary symptoms. So he was ruled out the urological problems from urologists. So we thought, I've done many cases like this where the significant urodynamics improvement after surgery. So this case again, the best approach would be transforaminal. When we do a CT scan, definitely the upper lumbar and thoracic patients, the discs are hard, firm, and you have calcification most of the time. To plan ourselves better, we should see whether calcification is complete or it's more inferior towards the end plate, inferior or upper end plates. So the position is same as I always do under general anesthesia nowadays. I don't do under local anesthesia. All my transforaminals are under general anesthesia. So the position is same as we do with all other endoscopic surgeries, prone under GA. So then mark a midline and a true AP line at the level of L1, L2 and a true lateral line. So these two lines when you see here, when you do lower part, let's say L4, L5, the lateral line is always cranial. As you go up towards L1, L2, the lateral line is always most of the time inferior because you can see the direction of the disc from lumbar lower to when it comes upper, it becomes more, the direction becomes more cranial. So this is within the common question asked is how lateral you go. So I follow this rough principle where the slope, you just mark the slope and you enter in that slope on the lateral way. So most of the time you are there, or you want to be more specific, you can calculate in the MRI, asking your MRI technician to give a bigger FOV, so where you get a bigger image including the subcutaneous tissue and you can calculate. So once you're gone there, then the question comes is the angle. So what angle I should go? So again, your target should be the facet initially as a beginner. So you target the facet. If you are more shallow in your angle, no problem. But don't start with a steep angle. You might have a difficulty. And in lateral, you understand whether you are cranial or caudal. Here we are more directed towards cranial. So we can adjust our needle again in AP. So what you should do is when you want to adjust, you come out. Don't try to manipulate in the same position because your needle will get bent. So you come out 5 centimeter outside, you are outside that the fascia, then you can again go in so that your needle is not getting bent. So once you go there, you can see because we are doing upper lumbar, the angle is steep here. And once I take a lateral view, so here again there are two techniques. One is the inside out technique and outside in technique. So Dr. Datar is here, who's a proponent of outside in technique. So he has developed various techniques. So here you can follow either outside in or inside out, doesn't matter, but you need to be there. So your angle need to be crucial here because we are dealing with a central disc. We need to go to the opposite side also. So you need to have
Sukumar, can we stop in between?
Yes.
Okay, you said you take the entry point from the slope rather than you don't take any measurement from the midline. So irrespective of that could be 9 centimeters, 10 centimeters,
So
11.
when you draw a line like this, you see the slope, normally you calculate. We did our own simple study on 100 cases. So most of the time L23 below, that is L34 and L45, it will be around somewhere between 12 to 14 centimeter. So as you go up, it will be around 10 to 11 centimeters. L1, L2 around 10 centimeters. In our Indian population, most of the time it matches. And when you calculate on the MRI with a bigger FOV, it matches. So we're writing on that. So we'll come up with the exact number, but most of the time it is correct. So that's what we found in our observation. So you see here, this should be the needle placement where you are entering the annulus and you are just here piercing the medial pedicular line here. So this, what does it? This tells you that you are entering the disc at the just below the annulus and you are safe. And because we want to do more medial work, this entry is safe. So then you just advance the needle. So what if the entire disc is calcified? So don't force your needle there. You stop on the summit, then you can pass a dilator. You see the calcified hump, then you can drill it or chisel it, then you can enter again. Or you can do entire work from outside, clear the tissues, identify, then you can chisel it out under vision. So here in the upper lumbar or thoracic, going blindly is sometimes dangerous. So once you pass a dilator, so here again, when you pass the dilator here, the common mistake in the upper lumbar is the discs are fibrous or firm, and you tend to hit the dilator like this. It might, because foramen is bigger, it might slip and enter the epidural space. So you should be very careful when you are dealing with a calcified disc. Don't hammer it too hard, where you need to understand it might slip and go into the epidural space. If you are finding it difficult, stop there, put a sheath and put a scope and see where you are. So that need to be understood in hard disc or firm disc, especially the upper lumbar, where your foramen is bigger, facet is not protecting you, and you might enter the epidural space if you are too shallow. So here the purpose is, you can see the lateral, I am just, my half sheath is inside and half sheath outside. So this is ideal position to start our surgery. So once you go there, you see like this, because here we are doing from the left side. So left side of our screen is cranial. Then once you go there, you just shrink the muscle tissue here. You see few things here. The horizontal fibers, so they are the tough annular fibers. Then the 6 o'clock is the space, the disc space, and the 12 o'clock is the epidural space. Here, what all components we'll be seeing: a tough annular tissue, calcified annular tissue, then just cranial to what you say posterior to it, that at 12 o'clock will be the epidural space. So can we negotiate our instruments here? Can we enter the disc easily is the question here. Because we are dealing with a hard tissue here, I'll just decompress and just come out a bit. You can see I rotated the cannula a little bit caudally, because here our calcified fragment is more caudal. A part of lower end plate cartilage is also a part of this conglomerate. So I just debulk so that to increase the vision, I just debulk at 6 o'clock. You are still safe. You are not gone to the epidural space here. This is called half in, half out technique, where you are half inside, your sleeve is half inside the disc, and your half sleeve is outside the disc space here, so that you can have a good view of both the horizontal fibers and the disc space. I came further out here. Now you can see some fat, and you take AP. So what does it tell you? I am at the medial pedicular line here. It means that 12 o'clock would be somewhere, your root will be there, lifted up because of the fragment. Then I cut this annular fibers and a bit of PLL fibers here to create more space and to visualize what is happening there. So once you do this, you can see now what I see here is a calcified tissue. That's the epidural pulsations cranially. That's what you say 12 o'clock. Then I just shrink the edges. Now you get a little bit picture where there is a epidural space which is pushed posteriorly, and here you can see the calcified part which is causing stenosis. So I just curate it out, the fibrous part, create more space. Now you can see the vision here. So now what I am trying to do is trying to define the hump. So I'm just going both caudally and cranially. You can see now you have a pulsating fat there. That's the epidural space, the root lifted up. Anteriorly you can see that's a whole calcified hump. So this was poking into the thecal sac. You need to downsize this or remove this entire hump. You can see that that's the inferior part, edge of the hump. That's the inferior edge of the hump. So this is very important to define. As Samba was asking, should we really remove the hump? So it depends upon the pathology here, especially when there is a midline hump which is poking into the theca and patient has a cauda equina symptoms. Definitely yes, we need to remove this hump, otherwise patient will never improve with the posterior decompression. So the classical teaching anterior pathology should be removed, sometimes holds good, most of the time, not sometimes. So now what I am doing here is just defining further the fragment. So challenges here are again the instruments. You need to have a good articulated instruments. You can use an articulated drill here, core out or eggshell the entire fragment and remove it. So, or you can come out further, do a little bit of foraminotomy where you drill the facet so that you can depress your sheath further to go to this fragment. So you can see now entire fragment with the calcified hump is seen there. That's what you need to be removed. This is a typical visualization you get in thoracic disc. Thoracic disc, this is how it looks and it is how it should be done in thoracic discs also. Once you reach there, this is how it looks most of the time. So now there are two ways of removing this fragment. Either you remove it piecemeal, drill it out, or you detach caudally and cranially. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to detach it cranial and caudal so that it becomes easy to remove the hump entirely. I'll just, the lack of time. So what I've done here is mobilize it. I'm using a chisel, is a custom made chisel. So you can just depress it further. So now you can see I've cut it on cranial and caudal. That's the almost healthy PLL seen there. That's a healthy PLL seen. So now I can remove it. You can see there. That's the thecal sac seen now.
Doctor, I have a question.
Yeah.
Regarding, I've seen you've made some rotatory movements, not too much craniocaudal. How much radiculitis have you seen with this type of technique at this level?
So you are not too much depressing the scope. So it doesn't have any problem. But you are depressing the scope too much, trying to catch the fragment. Then yes, definitely post-op patient has a lot of ganglion symptoms or the exiting root symptoms. So that you should be careful. So when you feel that the foramen is not bigger or you're not able to reach medially, such cases, you come out, do a drilling of the facet. That helps you depressing better, going more horizontal, not causing symptoms with the. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm cutting or detaching the cranial end of this. You can see almost I've reached midline here. So now we need to detach it caudally. So I again go caudally here, little bit, rotate the scope.
Do you anticipate any adhesions also during this?
Anticipate?
Any adhesions of the calcified disc to the dura?
Yes, so we need to identify and pass a probe. You can use your RF probe to just, or you can use a hook like this, try to gently tease out. But definitely there is always a plane. It is failure to identify the plane that we think it is adhered. So there will be always a plane. So now you can see it has detached both cranially and caudally. Now use a heavy forceps. Don't try to pull it out. You see what I am doing, try to rotate rotate it. I am not trying to pull, so rotate. So this helps to detach the fragment, and you can see a big calcified fragment has come out. So then again I go in here, and you can see there is a softer fragment now floating. This is beyond midline now. What we are seeing is this is beyond midline. So again I just go with I remove these soft fragments also. So these were causing him symptoms. So I just remove these soft fragments. So again, removing this soft fragment, you should be very careful. Don't use any blind hook or curved, especially the flexible instruments which are dangerous here. So you might injure the posterior dura, anterior dura. So again, you see the rotatory movements. I'm just pulling it out. Always be gentle. So now you can see the thecal sac falling down. Now entire thecal sac, it was bored into the thecal sac. I just removed it. So now I'm almost onto the opposite side now. So now I'm using a drill, which is a articulating drill. So this is a very beautiful instrument. We can drill out the lower end plate part, which is there. So I just coagulate it now. So that's the opposite route there. So that's the opposite route. So you can nicely remove this, and you can decompress. So you can see there I have gone till the midline and beyond to the opposite route. So just if you want to lower down the hump, you can use some instruments which are specially made, but again, debate where should we stop. There is no end for it. So if you are convinced that midline structures are well decompressed, especially in this patient, you should stop there. So challenges are when you are dealing with a calcified disc, you should plan your trajectory well. You can see here there's a lower part, still there is some part left. So I try to disconnect it. So I just use, again, I'm using a drill. This is how it is standard done in thoracic. So you can see now the entire thecal sac is well decompressed. We have not violated any facet here. So the entire hump has been removed. The inferior end plate cartilage, which was a part of conglomerate, also has been removed. So this is the least invasive pathway we can do, and just come out and with a small stitch, patient goes home. Usually people say should do under neuromonitoring, but neuromonitoring really doesn't help even if you use. So it's again you will be confused. So neuromonitoring, even though everything was okay, but still patients has deficit sometimes. So neuromonitoring utilization in transforaminal approach, it doesn't work well.
Dr. Sukumar, you mentioned initially that you do all your cases under general anesthesia now.
Yes.
Why is that so? I mean, you have changed your opinions about epidural analgesia or local?
So it all depends, various factors depending upon the patient set you are operating, which type of practice you do, whether you are in a private setup or a government setup, affordable, non-affordable patients, sensitive patients, VIP patients, good anesthetists. So it all depends. As your practice become better, so then you tend to get more VIPs, then you tend to be more safer. So you become more careful, more fearful. So your practice changes over a period of time. The fearless approach after 10 years become more careful approach. So GA, and with your experience, you know where you are. So most of the times you are there until unless, as Lokande showed, you are dealing with some anomalies which we can never understand on MRI. So you might have some disasters. Otherwise, most of the time, GA is safe when you are experienced.